At 0923 hours in the heat-smeared waters of the South China Sea, a U.S. Navy carrier strike group cut through the waves on what should have been another routine freedom of navigation patrol. No alarms, no warnings, just the steady hum of turbines and the familiar rhythm of power projection. But at that exact moment, 0923, the calm snapped. A Chinese Type 052D destroyer to the northeast angled its bow, slowed its engines, and painted a U.S. escort ship with its fire control radar. Not search radar, not tracking radar. Fire control. The kind used right before a missile is launched. For the next 30 seconds, the world sat on the edge of an unspoken cliff. One mistake, one misread, one trembling officer in a dark combat information center could have changed global history. To understand the weight of that moment, you have to understand what a radar lock really means. Search radar is like a flashlight. You scan, you watch, you observe. Tracking radar is a spotlight. You focus, you follow. But fire control radar is different. It is the finger tightening on the trigger. Fire control radar calculates the exact trajectory, altitude, and lead angle required for a weapon to hit its target. When a nation locks it onto another nation's warship, it sends a message much louder than words. We are ready to fire. Even though it doesn't launch anything by itself, the geopolitical meaning is unmistakable. Nations have gone to war over less. Inside the Combat Information Center of the U.S. escort ship, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, the mood shifted instantly. A soft but unmistakable tone echoed through the speakers, the alarm that signals a fire control lock. Sailors looked at each other. Several froze, not out of fear, but because they had trained for this exact sound countless times, yet almost never heard it outside simulations. The tactical action officer leaned forward, his voice steady as he confirmed the contact. Foreign destroyer. Fire control illumination detected. Code red conditions. The ship's captain was notified within seconds, and those seconds mattered. Meanwhile, only a few miles away, on the deck of the U.S. carrier, F-18 Super Hornets sat fueled and armed. Flight crews were already moving, preparing for what might be an emergency scramble. The carrier itself was too valuable, too large, too slow to maneuver out of the line of fire. It relied on its escorts to protect it. And right now, one of those escorts was staring down a digital trigger pull. Back on the Chinese destroyer, we may never know exactly what orders were given or why the radar lock was activated. Was it a test? A warning? A deliberate provocation? Or a junior officer seeking to prove a point during a tense patrol? What we do know is this: fire control radar is never used by accident. Someone made that decision. Let's walk through the second-by-second escalation timeline because the details matter. 0 seconds. The Chinese ship angles slightly toward the U.S. escort. 3 seconds. Fire control radar begins illuminating the American destroyer. 5 seconds. U.S. CIC confirms illumination and raises alert status. 8 seconds. The American captain authorizes defensive posturing. Missile tubes are warmed. 11 seconds. F-18 pilot crews are ordered to ready positions. 15 seconds. The carrier strike group's operations commander orders the fleet into defensive spread formation. 20 seconds. The Chinese destroyer increases speed, closing distance. 23 seconds. Additional Chinese ships begin to adjust their headings, creating a multi-angle threat. 30 seconds. U.S. destroyer initiates final pre-launch targeting steps for defensive missiles, but stops just shy of lock-on. This is the part most people don't understand. The U.S. Navy could have fired legally. Under international law, illuminating a vessel with fire control radar is considered a hostile act. Not a warning, a hostile act. It authorizes self-defense. The U.S. commander had the full authority to launch. But he didn't. Instead, he chose restraint. Not weakness, not fear, but strategic discipline. The commander responded with a measured action that sent a clear message without escalating the standoff. The U.S. destroyer activated its own fire control radar in return, a mirror lock, one that told the Chinese ship, "We see you. We are ready too." For 5 long seconds, both ships locked onto each other. The ocean felt like a quiet room holding 2 men with loaded guns pointed at each other's chests, neither moving, neither breathing. And then, just as abruptly as it began, the Chinese radar lock disappeared. The destroyer changed course, slowed down, and drifted back toward its original patrol line. U.S. forces maintained heightened posture for several minutes, but the immediate threat had passed. The crisis ended, not with a bang, but with a recalculation. Now, let's talk about the diplomatic and legal stakes. The U.S. was operating in international waters, waters recognized globally as open for navigation. The South China Sea is a contested region, but the law is clear. China does not have the right to restrict transit. The U.S. Navy conducts freedom of navigation operations specifically to challenge excessive maritime claims. China sees these operations as provocations. The U.S. sees them as the enforcement of global maritime law. Under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, using fire control radar against a passing vessel is categorized as use of force or threat of force. It violates international norms. It endangers lives, and it escalates peacetime tensions unnecessarily. Diplomats on both sides know this. It's why the U.S. immediately filed a complaint through back-channel communication lines, demanding explanation. China provided none. Only a vague statement about protecting sovereignty. But here's the truth. This wasn't about sovereignty. It was about dominance, about testing how far the U.S. could be pushed, about seeing who would blink first. The fact that both sides stepped back says more than any diplomatic statement ever could. It shows the fine balance between aggression and restraint, pride and strategy, deterrence and catastrophe. If war had started that morning, the world economy would have been shaken to its core, trade routes disrupted, markets collapsing, alliances triggered. A regional conflict could have escalated into something much bigger than the South China Sea. And it all hinged on half a minute. Think about that. 30 seconds determined whether the next chapter in human history began in fire. As we look to the future, incidents like this will only become more common. More patrols, more close calls, more commanders forced to make life-or-death decisions with global consequences. The South China Sea is not a quiet ocean. It is a chessboard, one where every move is watched, measured, calculated. But on that day, at 0923 hours, one U.S. commander made the right decision. He didn't blink, he didn't panic, he didn't escalate recklessly. He held firm, showed strength without firing a shot, and kept the world from sliding into chaos. This is the reality behind the headlines. This is what 30 seconds feels like on the edge of World War III.